Welcome, everybody. We've got a good crew here today. We're going to give everybody just one more minute before we get started. It's almost top of the hour. I'm Ron D'Andrea. I'm here in Connecticut, just north of New York City. With me is Will Reddick. Will is our head of marketing. Will's responsible for bringing everybody together here today. Well, let's get started. We've got just 30 minutes together today. We want to take full advantage of the time. As many of you know, I'm Ron D'Andrea. I'm founder and managing partner of Global Performance Group. Global Performance Group, also known as GPG, we're a performance improvement company, and we're dedicated to helping individuals gain the skills, the knowledge, the confidence that's necessary today to create profitable, sustainable agreements, even with the most demanding customers in this virtual selling environment that we all find ourselves within. We're going to spend a short amount of time together today to look into the future. What does 2021 hold for sales professionals? What will this new normal be, and how does it impact our ability to help our clients make the right business decision, at the right price? Since we've got about 30 minutes together, we're going to save 10 minutes at the end for questions. So as you think of questions, use the Q&A button that you see at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. If you have a question, enter it, and we're going to take them all at the end. Will help us do that. Okay? So thanks, everybody, again. Let's talk about something that's really important. The sales process and the trends we're seeing in 2021. Many clients have greatly reduced spending and put a moratorium on discretionary spending in 2020. This fact alone has created pent-up demand, and that is really good news for a lot of us. However, the world has changed, and most people agree that we are never going back to the way that we were. This means that customers are looking for innovation. They're not looking for the status quo. How business was done in the past is now only a reference point versus a guiding process to how business should be done in the future. The question all of us have is, what can we do differently to take advantage of this new normal at best, or at least deal with it satisfactorily at its most difficult, at its most challenging? Because of this change, customers are looking for new ideas. They want to know that you recognize their challenges, and they look to you to bring them solutions to the problems that they are facing today, but more importantly, help them achieve their outcomes, the measurable outcomes that are so critical. In 2021, it's all about achieving these outcomes, and our customers know, the key stakeholders know, that the status quo won't continue to work when their entire world has changed so dramatically around them. Innovation is going to be critical. But innovation isn't a trip to Creativity Island where all of a sudden this new idea is born. Innovation comes from collaboration, having a provocative dialogue with customers to not only identify and prioritize the known needs that everybody's selling to, but also help them discover and prioritize those unknown needs they didn't know they have, or needs that they had not considered your company for as the solution. They're buying from somebody else. Or even underappreciated needs that exist but haven't been dealt with because of a lack of resources or focus or competing priorities. What customers need today is you to help them transform their thinking. You know, if we were to think about what this means to a sales professional, over and over again we hear, I'm not looking for an off-the-shelf solution. There are new challenges that require new innovative approaches. So don't be afraid to make suggestions. Don't be afraid to be innovative. Differentiation is going to be important. Set the context, share the idea, and then clearly state why this is important to you, because we can't assume that they're going to understand it or get it or know it automatically. We have to be able to really help the customers understand this is the right way to go. This is why it's the right way to go. This is the outcome that you're going to achieve. This is what you have to do. People are having to create the new status quo because the old way doesn't exist anymore. And more, we hear people telling us, listen, I'm not interested in buying a product. What they are willing to invest in is obtaining clear and specific objectives, but they're also interested in owning the process. Using the collaborative process to co-create the right solution for your customers is going to enable you to see that this isn't an off-the-shelf solution. This is one that we have crafted specifically for the needs that exist for you today and in the future. And this is what's going to guarantee those outcomes. So customers see this as a huge differentiation. One example that we can share is what's happening in the publishing and education and learning development industry. It's been a huge and rapid move to ebooks, e-learning, as well as virtual facilitator-led learning. So how do customers adapt? How do you help the client take full advantage of this phenomenon? This change to e-learning is going to have long-lasting and permanent impact. So one of our customers, a publishing giant, has reacted to the new needs and helped their corporate, university, and school clients implement a blended learning approach that it has planned for and achieved measurable and immediate impact. What they did was anticipate this new normal for their customers, and they anticipated it even before the pandemic began. But because of the level of preparation and because they understood the new environment, they were able to really pivot quickly and effectively and actually come off of 2020 with a record sales year. Customers are clearly saying, don't get me off the shelf, help me co-create the right solution, make sure it's tailored for my particular needs. When you're able to do this, you really do become the innovation partner because you've added value to every interaction. And that's what's really important. These three numbers tell a story about our world today. They're all three actually percentages. In a major study that was done by Forrester recently, Forrester is a well-known sales research and consulting company. They leveraged data from 1,500 different companies. And what they found was that 77% of buyers reported that the salespeople calling on them didn't understand their business. So 3/4 of those groups that responded says, I've got lots of salespeople calling on me, but they're not adding value to me because they don't understand my business. Since buyers want to solve problems, achieve outcomes, and avoid risk, there's a huge lack of satisfaction with salespeople who focus on their own product, explaining its features and benefits. And what happens is, because of this, partially because of this alarming statistic, 57% of buyers said that their sellers were unprepared to add value in the sales process, which is why 40% of the sales opportunity resulted in no. Customers stayed with the status quo. They took the path of least risk, least resistance. The problem is the salesperson didn't create the incentive, create the urgency to really move. It's the triangle of challenge. How do you demonstrate your knowledge of the customer and the buying team? How do you demonstrate a level of preparation that you're ready to add value to the interaction? How do you focus on the business outcomes? And not just focus on what the problem is or the concerns, but really talk about how you're going to achieve those measurable results that are so critical to you. And how do you create an urgency to act when the common reaction is to stay in one's comfort zone and act in old but familiar and comfortable and perceived to be safe ways? What we do know is that buyers today are well informed. Research says that 55% of the buying process is completed before sellers are even initially contacted. So it's not about information today. There is so much information available that buyers often feel deluged, they're overwhelmed. And the truth is, they often know as much about you and your competition as you do. The key to success is really helping them sort through all that available data so they can focus on what's truly important. This requires planning, and not just planning for what you're going to say. what you're going to tell them. It's really also about the questions you need to ask. One thing that we do know from all of our work working with some of the world's biggest and best organizations is buyers don't have time to waste. They don't want you asking questions that they already know the answers to, and you should already know the answers to. They need you to ask questions that get them to think differently. They want proof that you're prepared, that you've earned the right to dialogue with them. And they want to know that you understand their environment, their situation, their market, and what they're trying to achieve. What they want to do is understand that you have empathy for your client situation, if you think of it that way. And they anticipate you being able to demonstrate that empathy. So they desperately need to know that you understand our business and the massive changes that they're going through, because business models are changing. From a sales perspective, a sales person has got to demonstrate that understanding, identifying with their pain, but instead of focusing on the problem, focus the discussion on how to achieve those outcomes that are so important to them. So, and thinking about that, and thinking about generating this outcome-focused dialogue, you've really got to know who you're talking to, who the stakeholders are. So often we go into a sales process and we don't understand, we understand our sales process, but we don't understand their buying process, nor do we understand the stakeholders who are involved in the buying process. Well, even if we know who the key players are, we're not always sure which players actually have the influence. They control the resources. They can say yes or no. We're also often not aware of which stakeholders have a preference for a particular supplier. We call it interest. So if you think about stakeholders, there's those with influence, there's those with interest, and sometimes there are those with interest and influence. But we've got to be able to determine clearly upfront not only what the buying process is, not only what the key criteria for success is, but who are the stakeholders, who has the influence, who has the interest, who has both. And then we have to really be able to gear the conversation even more closely to what's most important to these buyers, these business buyers, the president, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, the technical buyers, the CTO, the head clinician, if it's a healthcare industry. And then there's your user buyers. But then we also need to pay attention to what's important to them personally. What does this mean to them individually? We were working with a group not very long ago where a gentleman, 30 years in the industry, getting ready to retire, his key desire was to leave his mark. So how do you help this person leave his mark was personally important to him. So can you identify, can you prioritize, can you focus the conversation in a way that demonstrates not only is it about achieving those business goals, it's about hitting the technical requirements and surpassing them, and also giving you what's necessary from a personal standpoint, which means the key performance indicators, the KPIs, are so important. And remember, oftentimes today, there's a professional buyer who's involved in the decision-making process. How does this professional buyer, this procurement professional, how does he or she or they define success? What is the criteria for success that must be met? How is that success going to be measured? And can I furnish the data that's going to help them prove that the success is achievable and has been achieved? So it's really about this idea of emphasizing long-term satisfaction. And one way to do that is to help them, educate them, provide nuggets of value. Every interaction should create value for customers today. Are you able to share industry insights? What's happening in the industry that may help a customer make the right decision? What are the trends that are occurring right now? Is there new legislation pending that's going to impact their business? What are the pitfalls that they may encounter going forward? And what could they do to avoid them? Make sure that every interaction has value for the customer. Because the simple truth is, if a salesperson doesn't add value, then the client, the customer, the decision makers don't have time for that salesperson in this environment. It just doesn't work. So many clients talk about the challenges they face having to sell remotely. It's often has become harder to gain even the initial contact. And once you do, it's become more challenging to develop this personal relationship. And in 2021, today, relationships are important. There's no doubt about it. But the basis of those relationships is what has changed. With very short attention spans, buyers want to know immediately, have you done your research? Are you prepared? Can you add value? And what's in it for me? Social selling platforms enable you to give nuggets of value in short, bite-sized, memorable pieces. This information, this advice, this perspective, these examples that your customers can leverage. So you may not always be able to get them on the phone. You may not be able to get them on a Zoom call, but you do have the social selling platform that's going to allow you to continue to add value and create that relationship, create that level of credibility that's so important today. This focus on helping define the objective and adding nuggets of value is going to enable you to develop the level of rapport that's really important. And it was always important, it still is important. If every interaction is of benefit to the client, then he or she or they are more likely to take your call, respond to your email, engage in the dialogue. Using the technology to gain more information about the buyer, and when you do have them on the call, create that relationship with them, ask them to use their video, be prepared for the meeting, send an agenda in advance, be clear on what the outcomes are, what are the key walkaways, what preparation is necessary. Because we all feel so inundated, because we all feel deluged with too much to do and not enough time to do it, this level of preparation becomes even more important. And today, given the fact that there's such a great deal of perceived product parity, this sales experience is what has become the differential, what has really become critical. The social selling also allows you to maintain contact over a long period of time. Oftentimes, you lay the foundation for future opportunity, identifying a current or a perceived future need, even one that's not yet recognized. It requires more long-term planning and a process to maintain the contact with short, valuable, relevant messages. The goal is to gain share of mind, so when the time is right, you're the first provider that they think of. You're top of mind. So think in terms of demonstrable, measurable ROI. In today's world, more than ever, there is a prove it attitude. You say this increases productivity. How do I know? How is it measured? What data can you provide me so that I know it's true? What is the anticipated increase? And what's the evidence to show that that's going to happen again? Oftentimes what we find today is more and more involvement by procurement professional buyers, and their requirement is to provide the data which proves that this is the right decision. I'll give you an example. We work with a technology company that provides computer-aided software design. And rather than selling the solution, the salesperson was able to help her client understand the key obstacles to growth in their virtual selling environment. And because of this understanding of the environment, sharing this insight, sharing some experience, they were able to co-create a more comprehensive solution. Yes, it included the hardware and software, but it encompassed so much more of the services that were available, which drove the value of the deal up for the client company, but also drove the value of the investment up. It increased the return on the investment. So a way to help the client actually spend more, but receive a whole lot more. And in demonstrating that every solution has got to show demonstrable ROI, you've got to understand who the key buyers are and what the different roles and what the different stakeholders are, especially when procurement is involved. You've got to learn to speak the language of procurement and these other professional buyers. Today, major decisions are never made by an individual, or even usually not even by one particular function. There are a variety of stakeholders involved, and often today, procurement is leading the process. So learning to speak the language of procurement, even if they're not the ones who can say yes, they're often the ones that can say no. Not because it doesn't meet a technical or clinical standard, but because it doesn't hit the other objectives that are so important. So given the fact that procurement has obtained a cabinet level position in organizations today, and they are a key part of the decision-making process in 2021, more so than ever, let's take a look at what's important to them in their world. Let's take a look at that next. So, procurement elevated to cabinet level position in many organizations. They not only have input to the decision, oftentimes they control the process. And we know that in this age of COVID, organizations are looking to do more, often with less. So what procurement has been charged with is really driving business decisions with spend analytics. As a matter of fact, in a recent poll that was done of some of the world's leading procurement organizations, 72% of them said that they are driving business decision with spend analytics. Understanding this fact and being skilled at leveraging the ROI data to provide them with the information they need to do their jobs and become valuable. In essence, it's the proof that this is the right decision for the organization. 60%, almost 2/3 of the professionals polled, said that part of their job is to facilitate coordination across businesses so that various entities in one corporation are able to achieve economies of scale, which enables them to gain power in the negotiation. And 56% of procurement organizations polled said they are recognized as trusted advisors to the business. Today, oftentimes, procurement is no longer seen as the decision preventer, as the ones preventing the optimal decision. Because the way decisions are made today has changed dramatically and the total cost of ownership and usage have become critical, procurement is no longer a force to be avoided in most organizations, in many organizations. They become true business partners, making decisions about how to allocate these scarce resources. So key to procurement is protecting the company from risk. And risk takes many forms: market risk, fraud risk, quality, delivery risk, compliance risk. If you're in the healthcare, financial fields, they're just some of the things that are driving suppliers to innovate, that are driving our customers to say, not only help me achieve this outcome, make sure I do it in a way that's not going to drive higher levels of risk. I'm looking for new, creative, innovative ways to approach these situations. So knowing that the world actually began to change, yeah, it changed dramatically in 2020, but it's changed a lot over the last 12 years. Thinking about going all the way back to 2009, the way organizations buy fundamentally changed then, and it's continued to evolve even through this pandemic that we have been experiencing. So if we think about 2021 predictions, how will the year unfold? What are going to be the key factors for success? Number one, help your customers develop the new status quo through adaptability, innovation, flexibility. Not off the shelf. By the end of the year, we're still not going to know exactly what this new status quo looks like, we think. But we do know that distance selling is here to stay. You're going to be asked to take advantage of technology and save time and effort and actually reduce costs by continuing to meet virtually. So you've got to be prepared and recognize this virtual approach is not just the next best alternative, but it's become the norm, and it's going to continue to be the norm. And we're still going to be figuring that out as the year goes on. By the end of 2021, there's going to be continuing pent-up demand. but there's also still going to be a nervousness when it comes to making major commitments. Many experts expect this pent-up demand to reach a boiling point and create tremendous opportunity for us, but we've got to be laying the groundwork for it now. So we've got to make sure that even though the status quo is going to be the case, this pent-up demand is going to be there, and we need to be ready for it now. We need to be flexible and innovative. Those are the salespeople that are going to be most successful. And customers know that you aren't traveling. They know that you have more time. They're going to expect you to be more prepared. We're expected to do more. We're working from home. It's a 24/7 world. The virtual world has created a need for tremendous flexibility, including flexibility in terms of timing. With knowing with globalization, you could be asked to work with people across the globe at a drop of a hat. And it means you've got to deal with the time differences, the cultural differences, the different focuses that they may have. We've got to take advantage of that opportunity, but in order to do that, it's going to require higher levels of preparation for us. So if we think about the world in 2021, we know that distance selling is here to stay. We know that the pent-up demand is there. We know that there are a variety of stakeholders involved. We know that more and more the role of procurement is going to determine our success. And we know the level of preparation is critical. We've got to be able to quickly establish our value that we provide and make sure that every interaction does something for the customer, gives them what they need. We're going to pause for a second, but before we pause, let me just say a couple of words about Global Performance Group. Our focus is really working with sales organizations, large global sales organizations, so we understand how people sell, but we also work with large procurement organizations and teams, so we understand how people buy, and of course we work with leaders and teams. How do teams ensure that each person is contributing what he or she was hired to contribute, and that the right people are making the right decision with the right information at the right time? So it's not only what people need to be doing differently. Most people know what to do. It's how do you do it? And how do you do it in the pressure of the moment? And how do you sustain that behavior change so that people aren't acting in old comfortable ways in this new environment? They're acting in ways that enable them to be truly effective. So Will, we've got just a couple minutes. Do we have any questions that were submitted as I was talking?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple here that were dropped in the Q&A section. The first one is about the sources of information that you referenced earlier in the webinar. So the question is, what sources of information would you recommend for adding value?
Yeah, it's interesting. The key to this adding value with information is it of value to the person with whom you are speaking? And are you able to tell them, so what? Why this is important to you? Otherwise, there's so much information out there that they get lost, they get drowned, they are overwhelmed by it. We need to be able to carefully select from our marketing department, from our experience, from being able to share examples, never confidential, of course, but information that's going to be critical to them. But make sure that each piece of information, even when you assume they know, has the so what attached to it, why this is important to you. If it's not, don't bother sharing it. Another one?
Yeah, we have another one here. This one is around the impactful ideas and kind of developing it over the long term. So the question is, can you give an example of an impactful idea that you've seen developed over a long period of time?
Yeah, I reference it quickly and I'll say it again. The whole idea about changing the way corporations are training these days, the publishing company that we work with actually began that about a year ago. And they started planting the idea about how to make better use of the training dollars, how to leverage the time of the people themselves, how to customize individual training. And they laid out the idea in a variety of ways, leveraging social media like LinkedIn and other vehicles, giving people bite-sized pieces of information so that when the pandemic hit and they really had no choice, the organization was able to pivot. But then suddenly this wasn't a company that was focused on university education, they had already gained the familiarity through the social selling and those short topical key messages that were delivered. So a lot of times what we're seeing in today's world is plant the idea, nurture it, water it, fertilize it, because when the time is right, you're there. You're the ones that they know.
That makes sense. We do have one last question. This one is around procurement. So the question states, we know that procurement has grown more sophisticated in the strategies that they've been using to deal with suppliers. Do you have any tips or tactics that you recommend to counter these strategies?
It is true. What we found with procurement is oftentimes, because the role has grown, they're being hired straight out of university or business school. They often don't have the industry knowledge and experience that so often our buyers did. Part of the process is being able to educate them in the right way, providing them just enough information. But they also have very clear KPIs. And if we can understand what those key performance indicators are, then we're able to better negotiate and demonstrate that empathy that we were talking with. So first thing I would say is understand the buying process, understand the stakeholders, understand the role of procurement, and there are different ways to understand the level of power that they actually have. Get clear on what those KPIs are, and then make sure you give them the data that proves that your choice is the optimal choice. I know we got more, but I know our time is up, and we promised not to take more than 30 minutes. Well, thank you. Thank everybody who joined us today. We look forward to talking with you. If you'd like to learn more, join our user group. Just scan this QR code. You'll be part of our LinkedIn group, and we'll continue to share information with you. And by the way, February 24th, we're going to talk about what leaders need to do to provide feedback, coaching, and create motivation. So join us again, same time, February 24th.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.